I am. And my pastor, he asked me a question. He said, why do you keep going back to that person? And I'm like, we're not hooking up. We're doing things above board. And he just looked at me and he said, are you afraid to start over? And he pulled out an old school card from the lady who sings Midnight Train in Georgia. Some of y'all too young to know what that is. The singer, who sings? Aretha Franklin?
No, but I can't remember.
Well, whoever sings it, she says, I'd rather live in your world than live without you in mine. And he said, are you more comfortable being miserable with her than getting healing by yourself? And when he put the truth to me, I said, you know what, I can't do this. God can't bless this. If I have to make excuses for someone before I even date him, so some of the young ladies who were married in my church pulled me aside and said, Pastor, you can't roll like this. You love her, you're toxic, you need to shut it down. So for months, I just focused on work, school, church, and my roommate, who was my best man, he said, why don't you try this website that I tried? And I'm like, nah, dude, I'm not going on Tinder. It ain't that kind of party. I'm like, been there, done that. I'm like, I'm too old for that. And he said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to sign you up. Sign up. So I signed up and met a few kooks. And then I saw her smile.
And I was like, yeah.
So when you meet somebody, you don't see their spirit. We church folk, and people say, God led me to you. It don't usually work that way. When you see somebody, you have an attraction. I sent her a message that said, I like your smile. What that really was saying is, I like your physical features, which includes your smile. And our conversation started there.
And then when he sent me that message, I was like, another one of those, like you get it so much. But then I had been in a place where I'd met guys who would say, like, you're not going to have sex with me, so I'm not even going to go there. Or you're too, Shanti, you're just too sweet. You're just too nice. I've heard all of it. You're too sweet and nice. You're too intimidating because I've gone to school, I have my bachelor's degree, I'm a full-time employee, I bring in my own money, I can do battle by myself, So that was like a turn off for men because I was good on my own. So when he said, I like your smile, I'm like, yeah, I've heard that one before. But then I said thank you, because you have to have email etiquette. And he emailed me back and said, this is all that's wrong with me. Like, everything that he could possibly find wrong with him, that's what he sent me. And that shocked me because everybody's like so superficial about everything. And he just nipped it in the bud and went straight for, this is who I am. And I responded with, have you talked to God about this? Yes. Is this in the past? Yes. Who are you now? This is who I am now. So it's okay. And that's how the conversation started. I think that if he hadn't sent me that second message, we wouldn't be here right now.
Well, because, I grew up in a house where I never knew my parents. I never met my mother. She died when I was a toddler. Never met my father until I was about 26 years old. So growing up, where I grew up as a young boy, you project this image. And for us, it was hip-hop, it was rap. So, I got my baggy jeans, my Timberlands, my fitted hat, my white T-shirt, and I flash. What we would do is we get a knot of ones and put a couple 20s around it, act like we were really stacking money, And you show that and maybe some gold teeth, and if you had a ride, that's all you needed to pull a young lady. And the object wasn't to get to know her, wasn't to build together, it was to sleep with her. You grow up learning, like, this is the end goal. I'm going to spit some game, and I'm going to do that. And where does that, it didn't get me anywhere. All it got me was, well, there's young kids here. The Bible says in Isaiah 55, why do you spend money on things that don't satisfy? Why do you labor for the things that don't fulfill you? I did that for 20 years. I lost my virginity at 14 in the bushes next to a Presbyterian church. I knew where that led, so I'm like, I have to do something different. So before you date somebody, you have to recover from the things that harmed you. If you don't, they say you're going to cut on people who didn't hurt you. So that means I had to get therapy. I had to talk through the person who hurt me. I had to grieve that loss, those dreams and those ambitions. And I did that in a safe space because at the same time, my brother killed himself and my father died. So I was in no space to date at all because I already know where it's going to go. We're going to go to a strip club. We're going to get drunk. We're going to get high. You're going to wake up the next day regretting what you did. And to cover up that, you're going to just keep repeating the same cycle. My father did that. My brother did that. It led nowhere. So I had to figure out who I was before I met her because this woman here, she's Caribbean, first of all. And she was 3,000 miles away from where I was. So I'm in California, she's here in Florida. So we meet online, we're 3,000 miles away, and we're from different cultures and from different languages. All of those things, they can either be obstacles or they can be opportunities. I took it as an opportunity and said, here's what I'm working with. You can Google me and see my resume. I can give you my W-2s. You can see what money I make. But I'm like, you need to see what you're getting into before we get to the sixth date, before we get emotionally invested. Here's my liabilities. And it was different because usually you keep your cards close to the vest and you show your best self, your Instagram filters, your Snapchat filters. Here's the best me. But I'm like, I'm too old for that, man. Either you see what I'm working with and can accept me enough to where we can get to know each other, or we can keep it moving. And we kept it moving.
We kept it moving. Throughout the relationship, I didn't compare this relationship to my past relationship, but I did see where I learned, and I did see what he brought that I didn't think that I needed. You see, I had God boxed in. I want this kind of man. He has to be 6'5", blonde hair, blue eyes, yada, yada. You know, that list that we create, because you know as girls, from a young age, you're building this Ken of a man. That's not real. But I didn't know that I had been emotionally abused in my previous relationship. I didn't know. I didn't realize it until Joe came along, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this man was really abusing me this whole time. And until I met Joe, I said, you know, he believed in me. He supported me, like my dreams. He was willing to fly.
We'll get there.
I can't even remember how long, but the fact that I found someone that opened my eyes to what could be, to me, was the biggest thing. Is it hard and is it a lot of sacrifice? Yes, but for us, I'm from the islands. I was born in Curacao. If you don't know where that is, that's next to Aruba. But I was raised in Puerto Rico. So when I told my parents I met someone, oh, you met someone? Yeah, online. What? what's that internet thing? You know, it's as if they've never been online, and they're like, what is that, the internet? How do you meet someone on the internet? Who is this man? Where is he from? Like, all these, they presented a whole bunch of obstacles that to us, we were taking one at a time, and we didn't see it as a hardship per se.
And if when you first meet somebody, you're getting to know them, and you have a list, and the lists are normal and fine. In your list, you have to figure out what you want and what you don't want. Usually, the only way to figure out what you want is maybe figure out what you won't tolerate, what's a non-negotiable.
Yep.
For me, I'm like, okay, you can't be critical. You have to be a lover of people. You have to be compassionate. Other things I can deal with. Because if you have chemistry, if you're attracted to each other, physical things kind of take care of themselves. The other things, the spiritual, the emotional, the psychological, that's the stuff you have to build. And you can't we started that in an email exchange, and we started texting, and we started talking. But there came a point where I'm like, okay, I want to get to know you exclusively. We're going to name this. Because, men will say, we kicking it, we talking, she my boo, we thinking about cuffing. Just all these nebulous labels that men use to control women. And what they do is they treat you like a spare tire or a loaf of bread that they put in the freezer. And when they're ready, they'll bring you out to thaw. And they usually do that when it start to get warm or when it start to get cold. They control you, and because they won't label and say what they want, you remain an option for them. And usually that happens because you haven't sat down and thought through what you won't accept. And
You need to know that you're it. You are not an option. You are not, I'll come around whenever I'm ready. You're either here or you're not. You need to know what you're going to put up with and what you won't put up with. I knew that he had to love God. He had to love family. He has to love and respect me. And he has to have a good job. Because he has to have a good job. Because I met someone who was lazy. And I quickly learned that I could not be someone that won't be as hardworking as I am. So when you're in a relationship, you have to be watching these things. Are you bringing me up, or are you holding me back? If someone is holding you back, I ain't got time for this, because God is opening doors for you, and you need to be with people who are going through those doors with you. You can't be with people who are like, oh, no, 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 let's wait and see, when God clearly opened path for you to go forward. So those are the things you have to create. This is my personal list, but I highly recommend that when you're looking for someone to date seriously, to be in a relationship looking towards marriage, you have to be serious about these things: God, family, respect, work ethic. You know, you cannot be, how do I say it, lenient in these aspects, because this is going to define the rest of your life. This person, you don't think about divorce when you get married. Divorce is not an option. So unless there's obviously abuse, I'm not condoning abuse, but these things are serious. And if you put it forth from the very beginning of your relationship, like Joe did, like I did, these are things that I absolutely need, and then we'll work with the rest, then you guys could be together. That's how I saw it.
when we were starting to get serious, my mother, I'm adopted, and one of my foster mothers, she said, romance without finance is a nuisance. So there comes a point where to get what you want, somebody's going to have to pay. So I'm like, okay, I'm in California, you in Florida. I'm going to have to get on a plane. I'm scared of flying. Well, So I got on a plane and I came to meet her, her friends, and she had home court advantage. And
I made sure I had home court advantage. I was like, I'm not going over there to see you before you come here to meet me. Yeah. So,
well, what that does is, as a woman, you define the terms of what you want. Because if you don't put up boundaries, then we already know what's going to happen. As soon as the first boundary is gone, if he's not led by God, he's going to just take advantage of it. I want to ask you all, how would you answer this question? Finish this sentence. Dating is. What is dating for you? Starting point? I heard starting point. What is dating for you? Beautiful.
Oh, a learning experience.
A learning experience. Have you all seen the TV show Married at First Sight? I don't know if you all are old enough to consider something like that, but what do you all think of that idea? Marrying somebody on the first day that you meet
she's
them.
already shaking her head no.
It's like what?
I'm saying, isn't it just like being betrothed to somebody?
You mean engaged? They
From birth, they pick
oh
their
yeah, they
spouse.
somewhat like
Thank you.
Like
an
arranged
arranged
marriage.
marriage.
And then when they meet, they get married.
Mhm.
They don't see each other beforehand. And some of those marriages last for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in this case, they give them the option, though.
Yeah.
In those arranged marriages that you're talking about, they didn't really have a choice because this was like, um, they would make contracts between tribes and families. These are contracts between countries. Like they really don't have a choice. They have to get married or there's gonna be war. But in this case, which is married at first sight, they're like, oh, you're married for 8 weeks, or you can, get divorced afterwards. Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that there was a season 1.
So she doesn't know. So Married at First Sight is a TV show where you meet with a psychologist, a therapist, and a pastor or something. They do background checks on you, and then they take what you say with what another person says, and they match you. And then you guys get married. The first time you meet is at the altar. And you guys get married right then and there, and then for 8 weeks you're married, and after 8 weeks you decide if you're gonna stay married or if you're getting a divorce.
It's a reality show.
This is a true TV show that's happening.
And I get there's a season 1, but I'm like, how is there a season 2? And then you realize that there's like 15,000 people that sign up. Yeah. People in their early 20s and people in their late 30s, they sign up because they want to be married at first sight.
Well, not necessarily married. Some of these people say, well, I've always dreamed of being married. And they don't realize that marriage is another job. Basically, marriage is work. You can't just wake up one day and say, hey, I want to be married and I've always wanted to be married, so I'm going to go on this TV show. You have to know that person you're going to come into this life with because you're creating another life together,
In the beginning, in Genesis, it says God made Adam on the 6th day. And then God gave Adam some tasks to do. Any of you know what those tasks were? He named the animals, cognitive development. And in naming the animals, what happened? They all had mates, and he realized that he was what? emotional development. Then God set him in the garden, gave him a place to live. Then he said, dress the garden and keep it. He gave him a job. He gave him responsibility. Before Eve ever came along, he had cognitive development. He had some emotional development. He had a place to live, and he had a job and responsibility. And he was perfect. A person isn't going to be happy in a relationship unless they're first happy being alone. There's a difference between being alone and lonely, and you don't realize that until you're by yourself. What happens is when we get that feeling of loneliness, we already know what happens. We do those things when we're hungry, alone, lonely, or tired. We engage in those coping activities that just covers up the loneliness. And what happens is, if it's Friday, today, you're going to wake up tomorrow, and the same things are going to be there. So before you can go and improve yourself, you have to first make a decision. And that's what I had to do. Before I ever met her, there were things I had to do by myself. I had to make a decision that I wasn't going to stay where I was. I said, I can't change what I've done. I can't change what's been done to me. I can't change the things that are in my family system. All I can do is be aware of them, not judge them, and be the best person that I can be. So when I meet her, we build together. Adam, one of the reasons why God gave Adam a home before he gave him a job, so he would realize that his home didn't come from his job. And everything that he had was a gift, even his work and his responsibility. So if a man can have emotional development, cognitive development, a career, and handle responsibility, and feel incomplete, you're ready to be put to sleep, and you're ready for God to bring whatever he has for you. And when I met her, I had 2 jobs. I had a 1-year plan, a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, and I was working it. And I said, even if she never comes, I'm still going to do what I can do where I can be the best me. And when she came along, I was ready to, I think we took 13 flights back and forth. I was like, in order to make this long-distance relationship work, we're going to have to see each other. Because, you know, you can FaceTime, you can text, you can email, you can talk. But I'm like, we need to touch and talk and see what's what and experience each other as human beings. And we...
Even when we were connected mentally from all our conversations, and my feelings were really deep already, we hadn't seen each other in person, but I knew that there was something real. When he first came and we met at the airport, even then it was like there was something that we both were shy. We didn't know how to act around each other. We're like, you know, like, do I hold his hand? Do I hug him? Like, what do I do? Even though we had been talking. But what I love the most about our experience is that I love his mind, like the way Joe thinks and he processes and how deep he is, and he has so many layers. I fell in love with that before I even saw the rest of him, and I could say, oh, yeah, he's hot, you know, lucky me. But he is a very special human being, and I got that before we were present in the same space.
And, you know, a man, and we're talking about, well, a man and a woman. When a woman says she wants X, Y, and Z, or wants to do or have, the first thing that comes in the man's mind is how much is it going to cost? And, you know, you do a cost-benefit analysis. I do this to get this. But love, agape love, there's different levels of love. Love is where you do something, you make a choice to do it without any guarantee of return. So when it says God demonstrates his love toward us, that while we were yet sinners, he died for us, he died not knowing we were going to be sitting here in church. He died not knowing that we would be in love with him in return. So when I got on that plane the first time, I'm like, man, I'm spending a G just to go say hi. And then that hood mentality comes back. You're like, okay, if I spend this, I'm getting this in return. Nah, I'm going to meet her friends, and we're going to just get to know each other. It's like we were in the military, and I just got back from a deployment. And there were times where, you hand me that? Where, I mean, I had a really good job. And there were weekends where I just said, I want to be in Orlando. Her sister was here, I think it was Labor Day, 3 or 4 years ago. And I said, I'm going to come see you. We already had a plane ticket for the next month. And I'm like, I have this weekend off. I'll just come through. She's like, it's not like you're going to jump in a car and drive to L.A. I'm like, well, I'm actually going to fly to L.A. So I flew to L.A. to connect to Orlando. I leave right after work, go straight to the airport. I get to the gate 2 minutes after they close the door. The plane is still there. They were actually late, and I'm like, yo, all you got to do is open the door. I ain't checked no bag. I just got this carry-on. Sir, the policy says, and I'm like, I'm only going to have 2 days in Orlando. So I'm there. It's like 10 o'clock. The plane isn't going to leave until like 8 o'clock the next morning. So I've already lost. So I call her and tell her what happened. She's like, why don't you just turn around? It's an opportunity. I probably said something romantic. Even if I get to see you for a day, girl, some R&B lyric.
Yes, it was something very cheesy.
But I was like, I would rather spend a day with you because I already know what I'm going to go back and do. I'm going to hang out with my friends, go to the ocean. I can do that anytime. So I came here, I think it was for like 15 hours. It was about $900. But we got this picture here this was the day I was going back to the airport. I got in late that night. It was Saturday, and her sister was here. And then I think this was at the Orlando Eye, and we went to the aquarium that was there. But in this picture, well, yeah, I was here for a day, but it was worth it because I got to spend it with her and meet her sister because I'm like, when am I ever going to have this chance again? It was progressing to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm going to be meeting your parents soon. I got to kick it with your sister at least once because if I have you and her, it's going to be 3 against 2 when I go meet the parents. So we would fly back and forth every few weeks, and it cost about 15 grand. But I wasn't doing it to get something. It was an investment because a man is always thinking, always strategizing, sometimes scheming. But I knew what I wanted to do, and I already had made the decision. I didn't tell her. I'm like, we're dating not to hook up, not to just have a label. I have a plan. I didn't know I was going to be coming here to Florida because for me, from my history, as a foster kid, as an orphan, I've been abused. I needed to feel safe. I'm like, it's easy to spend out, to kick out cash, but I'm like, for me to move 3,000 miles, I need to feel safe. And when I met her family, I flew to Puerto Rico. I flew 9.5 hours from Sacramento to San Juan, and then it was like a 2 or 3 hour drive to Mayagüez. And her parents had this whole list of questions because where I grew up, a girl comes and picks you up, or you go and pick her up and you honk the horn and she comes out to you. Never goes in to meet the family. honks the horn, she comes out. When was it Jacob, when he met Rachel, when he kissed her at the well, it says she ran and told her father. He lifted the lid off the well, she watered her sheep, and he kissed her and he started crying. That's kind of weird, that's creepy. And then she ran and told her father. If a brother can't meet your parents, if he can't meet your friends, if he can't meet the people who's important to you, something's up.
Something's wrong.
So I go and meet her parents. It was like Liam Neeson in Taken. They wouldn't tell me what we were doing. They would say, get in the car. I'm thinking they're about to abduct me and take me to some secret lab and to interrogate me. Because they had a list of questions. Her mother said, can you cook? Do you speak Spanish? Her father had these questions, and he said, don't take my daughter to California. I'm like, yes, sir, because he's like 6'4", 270. I'm like, yeah. When he said that, I'm like, okay, I knew we're not ready to have this serious discussion, which I was thinking about. When it hit me that flight was 10 hours, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to make that move and come here to Florida. There still was no guarantee. When I came here, I had a demotion, I had a plan, and I started working that plan. Once I moved here and my pastor's wife, she said, Joe, a relationship needs concentrated amounts of uninterrupted time. You need to experience each other. Flying in, going to a movie, going to Disney, going to Busch Gardens, going to BJ's, that's not enough. Y'all adults, y'all need to really get to know each other and ask hard questions. So when I came here, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to work my plan. We went to Puerto Rico again after a couple months, and I knew in my mind I had wanted to marry her. So I started the process that God showed Adam. I'm like, okay, we need a place to live. So I started the process of buying a house. And I'm like, okay, I need a ring. So me and her sister got together, and her friends and my friends, and she was sized for some rings, and we had chose a ring. So when I went to her father, I had this monologue in my head. I'm like, you've already seen my background check because it's in a PDF form going back like 30 years. I'm like, there's a clean record by grace. He was like, well, what are you going to do? Where are you going to live? I'm like, well, actually, I'm buying a house tomorrow. And I was able to pull out my phone and said, this is the house I'm buying for your daughter. And I came here to Florida not to play games. We've been dating for a year and a half. Here's what I'm working with. And then her mom came in the room. She was out with her friends. And, they said, you two have been dating, and I see that you two love each other. And he kind of sat back and was like, there comes a time in the daughter's life. I was like, oh, it's that speech. And I had a plan, but I had to put things in place in order to work it. And to propose to her, I deceived her. I'm a bad liar because I write things on my face. You can see things on my face.
Yo, he was so terrible. I was actually contemplating, like, ending it. Because he just started, my friends told him to kind of ignore me,
I can do that.
and he did such a good job. And us women, we don't like to be ignored, and it's not like an obvious ignoring. It's like he's there, but he's not. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? You're not here. And he's pretending not to be there, and just so that the proposal would be more special, my friends said. And I'm like, the woman you're dating, I'm crazy. You can't do that. But when he finally proposed, which it actually worked out because he planned this whole elaborate proposal, and I almost ruined it because my parents were here. They came secretly, and I got sick at work. And my boss told me, go home. So if I had gone home like she told me,
They
I would have
would've
met
walked in
them
on us.
and his dad at my apartment. But I was like, no, I'm a good employee. I'm going to suck it up. I'm going to finish my 12 hours, and then I'll go home. So I didn't know they were all partying. Dad was cooking. They were all having Caribbean fun, and I'm at work. But
And you got your nails done the day earlier.
he made sure, he's like, go with your sister, get a manicure, you deserve it. And I'm thinking, what does he care about me getting a manicure, you know? But him, I don't know, working with my sister and with my friends, so.
Well, what it was is I said, I want to be an asset and not a liability. Because when you, as a man, and when you come from where I came from, and you compare it to where she came from, two parents, Caribbean, Adventist, service, compassion, hard work. I mean, she's got A's most of her life. I failed out of college twice. It took me 9 years to get my bachelor's degree. And I'm like, then I started playing this self-hatred. You're not good enough. All these other, you're too old. So I wanted her to have the experience that every person wants. Okay, I'm gonna meet you. I'm gonna go meet your family. I'm gonna buy you a house. I'm gonna get the ring. I'm gonna fly in our families. There's gonna be a videographer there. There's gonna be a saxophone player there, a photographer there. We're gonna have a big engagement party at the beach. I'm like, I wanted to do it big because I'm like, I'm not doing this a second time. I'm like, so I'm gonna do it right. It costs, but I'm like, I'm gonna do it right because she was worth the investment. And one of the reasons why I told her all the things that happened to me, some of the things that happened to me and some of the things I did is because as a man, and we might talk about it some tomorrow, you make mistakes and bad choices. You can outlive them, you can correct them, or you can allow God to redeem them. There are some things you can outlive. I ruined my credit at 19. Well, after 7 to 10 years, it falls off your credit report. Not knowing how to deal with money. That doesn't go away. You get an STD. Well, there's medicine for that. Some pop up chronically, but you can outlive those. If you have a baby, you can correct that. But if you don't know how to be a man and how to be a man of God, you're not gonna redeem those. So it took me time to get things right and for me to be the person that we're not gonna just, okay, we're gonna do this commitment thing, we're gonna do this church thing, we're gonna do this God thing, and then in 2 years we're gonna shut it down. Because I already know where that came from. My brother, he died in jail 7 years ago. He got married like 3 times. He had 14 houses. He had a business and an MBA. He had it all, but he killed himself because he wasn't the right person. He didn't allow God to heal the hurt from our childhood. And I'm like, if I don't take care of this, it don't matter how much money I make. It don't matter what clothes I wear. It don't matter what degrees I have. It don't matter what neighborhood we live in. She's going to leave me. So I had to become the right person, and I believe by God's grace I'm continuing to do that. Do you all have any questions for us?
I guess the question that I have is how do you tell people to leave you alone about, oh, when are you going to get married? No, like, I'm so serious because
Well,
it's annoying.
It's never gonna go away. I can tell you that. I got married at the age of, at 32, 33 years old. It's never gonna go away. It's ingrained in our culture. When are you gonna get married? And then when you get married, when are you gonna have kids? they asked us that on our wedding day in the reception. Like, when are you having kids? It's like, it's not gonna go away. It's gonna keep coming specifically for us, our cultures. What you have to do is, you can either let it affect you and bring you down, or you can just roll with it and be like, when God says, and, just do you. But I can tell you this, it's not easy to do you. It took me years. I reached the point, I was so low when I remember I went to the movies. I was at home one Sabbath, went to church, sang, because I used to sing in a trio, had Sabbath lunch, went home, took a nap, woke up, and when I woke up, I was sick of my family. I was sick of my friends. I was sick of everything. I didn't want to look at anybody. I went, I took a shower, got in my car, and my dad's asking, "What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?" And I drove off. I just woke up like that. Got into a movie, and I cried. Like, everybody was paired up. It was like some comedy, a romantic comedy, and I was the only single person in the movies, and I was bawling while everybody else is laughing. That's how low I got. You have to reach a point where you can be okay with yourself. You have to love yourself. I am enough. If somebody doesn't want to be with me, then too bad. But I am good. I am honest. I am hardworking. I am beautiful. And, it can take years. I got married at 33, I believe, 33. I have a cousin. I think she's the most beautiful woman ever. And she didn't get married until the same year we did, and she was 40 years old. Imagine everybody's asking her, "Ludi, what's wrong with you? You're a pastor's kid. Why are you still single?"
President's daughter.
It's beating on you, and it hurts, because when people say these things, it hurts, because they're not saying like, "Oh, men are missing out." They don't say, somebody's missing out for not being with you. They say, "Why are you single?
Or what's
Why
wrong
aren't
with
you
you?"
married?" So it makes you feel like something's wrong with you, when actually there's nothing wrong with you. Absolutely nothing. You just have to love you and who you have become, and just keep working hard to, go through those doors, reach your goals, be who God meant you to be, so that when somebody does come, you are whole. You're not looking for someone, this phrase, "you complete me." You have to be whole. This person comes and adds to what you already have. That's how I see it.
Devon Franklin wrote a book about that, what men want, or the truth about men. And they asked him on The View about the whole idea of people looking for their other half. That's pagan mythology. It was the idea that God, or the gods, took half of our heart and put it somewhere, and you go searching around for your soulmate. And he said, we're not two halves looking to make one, because two broken people don't equal one whole person. We're two whole persons looking to come together. You ask yourself two questions. What kind of life do I want? Because when you can set your own expectations, your own goals, your own ambitions, how am I going to serve God? How am I going to make the best of this life? Because you only get one of it. You begin to understand that there's many cultures in our church. You have Christianity, you have Adventism, we have Caribbean, many subcultures. And every single level of subculture puts expectations on you. And they're all inherited through culture, through our socialization, from our family, our friends, society, religion. And they're all false. They're not necessarily wrong, but they're false. Because girls are taught your value comes based off of how your body looks and what your body can do. Are you attractive, and can you have children? When you look at the biblical record, That's false, because when you look in Genesis 6, there were tall people, there were successful people, there were attractive people. But when God looked at them, it says their hearts were only evil all the time. And then they tried to jump into relationships, and it says they had good-looking kids. So relationships didn't complete them. Children didn't complete them. Only God could complete them. And you know the story of Noah. You know. So our fulfillment doesn't come from getting a person. Fulfillment doesn't come from having children. You add when you come together, and because you have so much love together, that's what produces a child. Because a child isn't going to bring fulfillment or a partner. So honestly, when somebody's hating on you, just ask yourself, have you ever met a hater that's doing better than you? There's a reason why they're putting their expectations of what they don't have or think they should have on you. And that's a them problem. That's not a you problem. I was 37 when we got married. Next question.
Can you define what losing your mind looks like in a relationship?
When you can't be who you are, when you can't be authentic, have you ever seen Medea's Family Reunion? My brother, he got married as a sophomore in college, got a house, worked at the bank, working for the mayor, had a baby. He looked the part. You know, baby had curly hair. You know, they're doing it big. But he didn't deal with his alcoholism because we both started drinking as kids. He didn't deal with his father, his daddy issues. He didn't deal with his psychological issues. And he thought by being in a relationship that would make him better. A relationship only makes you more of who you are, just like having money or having freedom or having access. It just makes you more of who you are. So if you can't be authentically you, you're going to compromise your identity for another person. And if they're not in it with you,
It's true. You can't lose who you are. If the person you're with doesn't allow you to be you or has issues when you are yourself, you're going to start losing your mind because you're going to start pretending to be someone you're not. I can tell you from personal experience, why are you cutting your hair that way? Where have you been? I've been looking for you. Well, I told you I was going to go study.
you ain't text me right back.
Yeah, you're not answering. You weren't at your apartment. I almost knocked down your door. Well, I have a job. And then I became a person that it wasn't me. But when Shanti would come out, we would have these screaming matching arguments, like, because he couldn't handle who I was. So if you're in a relationship where you cannot be yourself, you're gonna lose your mind.
Cardi B.
If you're conflicted about any part of that relationship, that's gonna bring anxiety, it's gonna bring frustration, and all that is part of losing your mind within a relationship. So you have to be careful and know who you are, because you might notice it or you might not, like it happened to me. You might not even know that you're losing your mind in that relationship. So always be your true authentic self at all times. That's how, if you fail to do that, that's how you lose your mind. At least that was my personal experience.
Because men who aren't led by God, they want intimacy without commitment, where they don't care about your mind. They don't care about your spirit. They don't care about your emotions. You're a vending machine.
And you say men, but there are women
Well, yeah.
who do this too. We were listening to something this week where the guy who always liked ice cream now says, we don't eat ice cream. Like she had gotten so much control over him that he was even saying that we don't do this when it was actually she didn't like it, but she encroached it on him. So, he lost his true self.
All right, the second question was for us, like young people who are like starting to date or something like that. Like, how would you suggest that? Well, like, how do you start off the dating process, basically?
Well, let
It-
me tell you, at least for me, I didn't date. I was a nerd, but then I had a very strict father who didn't allow dating. And if you even looked at a boy kind of sideways, he'd be like, and scare the guy off. That was my experience with my dad. But when you start dating, I always recommend be in a safe, at any age, be in a safe space. Don't be alone, because you don't know, especially with everything that's happening in this day and age. I don't recommend you be alone. You can go to public places and still be in a date and have fun. Have like space, respectful space between the two of you. You have your personal space, he has his personal space. Yeah, you can hug and whatever, but be careful because hormones are real.
And I grew up in the Pentecostal church, and before I came to the Adventist church, and even here we were taught that, and it's completely against scripture, because Adam and Eve were emotional beings, they were spiritual beings, and they were sexual beings. We weren't taught that hormones and emotions are legitimate needs, but what we do is we meet them in illegitimate ways. Dating and how to relate to the other, that begins when you're like 2 and 3 years old. Being an orphan, being in foster care, being abused, I started being abused when I was 6. Those boundaries got blurred. And if I didn't get therapy, if I didn't get love, if I wasn't in the right home, I'd be in jail I have another brother in jail. I'd be locked up because I wasn't taught how to get to know someone without pressure and with boundaries. Because boundaries are like this, where you have two things, two objects. I give you the cold shoulder. You don't text me back. We go to school together, and you walk by me and don't acknowledge me. I'm going to ignore you. You have distance. Then you have like this. We got to hold hands. We got to cuddle. We got to, I never paid attention in church, so I'd be in the back row either sleeping or I would go down in the basement and kick it with my friends, and there had to be some girls there, just enmeshed, as they call it, where you don't know where you end and the other person begins. No identity, no individuation. But you have boundaries like this, where you know who you are, you know what you want, you're respecting the other person's autonomy, you're not insistent upon having your own way. So when you can get to know somebody in a safe space without pressure and without boundaries, and if they start to cross those boundaries and start to pressure you, well, I was going to say cut them, but know how to defend yourself. Tell them to kick rocks, man. Because if somebody is putting pressure to meet a felt need, a human need, in an illegitimate way, you already know where that's going to end. That person isn't a person of God. They either need to get saved or they need therapy. Maybe both, like me. But when you're dating, you need to get to know someone.
Ask questions.
Ask
Questions,
hard
and
questions.
not superficial questions. Ask real life questions. You want to know how this person thinks. You want to know how they operate. What's their MO, you know? Don't like, oh, how are you today? You know, yeah, that's just ask them something that happened in the news today and it really impacted you. What do you think about this? That'll lead to a deeper conversation and you'll get to know each other on a whole other level. You'll see I'm deeper than this person, or you'll be like, okay, we're on the same page. So that's another way. How old are you? 20? Yeah, so you want to ask those questions. You want to, if you're thinking in a deeper level, ask your deep questions. Don't go superficial for the sake of the other person.
Don't you never, well, is that in the sermon tomorrow? Maybe. Samson failed because he went down. He went down to Timnah, down to Sorek, down to meet Delilah. If you have to compromise who you are in any way, your mind, your financial goals, your education, your spirituality, to be compatible with somebody else, if you got to do tricks to get them, you're going to have to keep doing tricks to keep them. So if you saying, I want to own a business, I want a master's degree, and he not working on that level,
That's not him. That's for sure.
so there are 4 levels of communication. You have 2 people. You can talk about yourself. They can talk about themselves, and you want that. You know, where you're from, your family, your school, and whatnot. You can talk about other stuff. You do that to build rapport. You know, we talk about the weather. We talk about hobbies. So you can talk about yourself. They can talk about themselves, and they can talk about other things. And we do that. I mean, you're not going to be Dr. Phil and Oprah all day, every day. But then there comes a point, and it takes a risk to where you talk about us. You have boundaries. You have a safe space. You know who you are. You have rapport, and someone has to take a risk because authenticity and self-disclosure are related to risk. And I believe that, and this isn't about gender roles, I think the man should take the lead in risking. That's one of the reasons why I told her, I'm like, if you want a man who came from a 2-family home, who never been hurt, who never failed, that ain't me. And if you can talk about us, but that happens, you get to that space when you've shown me who you are, when you show me what you're working with, when I know your family history, when I know your backstory, when I know your goals, then you can maybe get the keys to my heart. But he or she has to prove
Yeah,
themselves.
they have to earn it. You're welcome. I'm just manning the mic.
All right.
Okay. Okay. They have a
One
question
last one.
right over there. Yeah. Yeah, because we can't really hear you up front.
Okay, so we came in kind of late. I just wanted like the backstory of like how you guys met online. Or how
Well, we
that came
met on
about.
a Adventist Christian dating site. I saw that she was attractive, and I said I liked her, and that started a conversation. And in that conversation, we built rapport, and I shared some things from my past, and that led to us talking. But I had to take the next step of flying here because I was 3,000 miles away. So I'd fly here, and she'd fly there. I think I'd pay for it, but yeah.
I paid, listen, this man. Okay. So it's, at first we would pay for, like he would pay for his, I would pay for mine, but then we reached a point where he was taking care of me. It wasn't because I couldn't, but he's like, I want you to come visit me. I'm preaching XYZ church. I would really appreciate it if you could be there with me. And I'd be like, okay. So we had reached that point where he just started taking care of it. It was expensive, but I mean, it was a lot of sacrifice, but we made it work. Yeah.
And then after about a year or so, I moved here, and we
And
dated
we
for
made
another
it.
year and then got
Mhm.
married
We got married 2 years and
about 5 months ago.
yeah, but we got married 2 years after we started dating, like 2 years and a few days.
So meeting online, it didn't make things easier. It was just a vehicle. It's like if you um, do speed dating or do a social, it's just an introduction. But the hard work
Yeah, you have to
is,
put in the hard work. Yeah.
because like my dad, well, I have relatives, like it's Friday night, they'll go on Tinder, it's 9:30, they'll meet up somewhere at 10:30. It's a vending machine transaction. That's not serious.
I have a question. So
Mhm.
my question is, how crucial was it for you to move within like that first year? Do you feel like you had to?
Who, me? No. Well, I was stubborn. I'm like, when I was there, I doubled my salary in 4 years. I was working on another degree. I had these plans. None of them included a woman, because I'm like, I'm done. I'm like, I'm gonna adopt a baby, get a puppy, and get a house. When I met her, I saw where things were going, both with us, but also in society, because I made a lot of money in California, but I didn't have the quality of life that I wanted. So again, the first question is, what kind of life do you want? And for me, I want stability. I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to be near my family. And to do that, I had to come here. But also in coming here, we needed to get to know each other where we were in the same space.
Yeah.
Because you can, things are fine for a weekend, but you get on a plane and you go back to your life.
Yeah, and then when you're dating that way, I always had my hair done. I always had makeup. I always had my best clothes, and he always looked good. But then you have to listen to wise counsel. We had several married couples that they all suggested the same thing. You have to spend time together so that you know if it's real or not. You can't just be back and forth. Um, and then the job just came out of nowhere. He moved, and that's when we actually got to see our true, authentic selves, because I wouldn't wear makeup all the time anymore, and he wouldn't cut his hair all the time anymore, and we'd be tired after work. And that's when the real person comes out, when you're exhausted and you're frustrated and you're not putting on the best part of you like one weekend a month. So it wasn't, we didn't have that time, like that clock set for a year, but eventually we would have had to move because the relationship was leading that way where we had to like be in the same space at some point. So it was either me going there or him moving here.
And practically speaking, Florida had many good reasons to move here. The cost of homes, no state income tax, the homestead exemption, cost of living, proximity to the beach.
His
There were just
family's in New York.
many reasons to be
My
here.
family's in Puerto Rico, so it was easier to travel to visit family too, versus living in California and having to fly thousands of miles and thousands of dollars just to see family.
So check this out. When I moved here, I think she got a promotion, and then she's been getting promotions ever since. I haven't gotten promotions, but it's not about what title I had, how much money I made. It's about career satisfaction and life satisfaction. And here, God has more than made up anything I lost. I don't even care about the titles anymore. Because the things that are important to me are all here. But it was an ego hit, because for me, the person I was dating years before I met her was kept getting job offers all around the country. And I'm like, wait, I thought you were coming to be with me. Because when God made Adam and Eve, Adam didn't go live where Eve was. God brought Eve where Adam was. He had built something, and God brought Eve. So that was ingrained in my head. But when you love somebody, you risk, and it's more than worked out. I've done more in 4 years being with her than I did in the previous 16 years of being without her. Educationally,
He says stuff like that, and I'm over
financially,
here like, yay.
professionally, emotionally, spiritually. I faced all of my fears: flying, zip lining, being in the middle of the ocean, swinging bridges.
I'm more adventurous, so I always wanted to do these crazy
She grew up on
things.
an island.
Yeah, to me, going to the beach is like, yeah, we're going to the beach, get in the water head first, and he's over here like, what are you doing? I'm like, just get in the water, you know? It's, um, what's normal for us, for him was brand new. So it's been good learning from each other. Let's see if they have another one.
All right. So she had a question about cohabitation, like living together before you get married. How do you guys feel about that?
Oh, we live separately. I had my apartment, he had his apartment. Even when he moved here, he lived several minutes away. We didn't live together.
Yeah, I think the question is because you guys say like you have to know the person.
Yeah,
Is it
well,
like
that-
know the
No,
person
no.
like sexually as well before you
No.
get married, or
No, we're not. When we
No.
talk about knowing the person, we're talking about knowing who you are as a person. Not cohabitation. We're talking about knowing that person. Like, I don't know you right now, but I'm pretty sure that if we spend time together and we go out to the mall, we go do this, we go do that, we will get to know each other and we might become friends. That's the type of getting to know the person. Because when you live in California and Orlando and you only see each other once every month or every 2 months, you don't really, you know that person, but you don't know what life is going to be like with them because you've never been in that space with them. But Joe, after he moved here, I'm a nurse at Florida Hospital. I was at Orlando campus, and I clock in at 6 in the morning, and I wouldn't clock out until 8:30 at night. So by the time he got to see me, it's already 9 o'clock at night, and I'm done. I'm emotionally drained. I have nothing left to give. And that's who he had to deal with when he moved here. He wasn't getting the happy-go-lucky shanty of 1 weekend a month when I would go to church with him and we would eat with his church family. He was meeting the person that had absolutely run out of everything because I would give it all to my nurses and my patients. And then I got to meet the Joe that hurts when his patients die because he's a hospice chaplain. So we had to learn who we were when we were at our worst, and we got to see each other when we were at our best. But it would have never happened if he would have continued to live in California and I was still here in Florida. That part of who we are would have never come out until we were married. And you don't know if you're able to handle that, you know? What if he would have met me in that space and said, I can't be with a woman who's so empty at the end of the day, has nothing left to give me when I have such a hard job? And what if I would have seen Joe in that space when he's reached that low point and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this? Because you need to be able to know, can you be with that person when they are at their worst? So when we say you have to spend uninterrupted time together, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah,
The
no, it's not
reality of
cohabitation.
life. What is life really like for you? So yeah, it's not cohabitating, it's the real life stuff.
You ask God, it's like a final question you ask God. God, we have a list, and I think Steve Harvey did the 80-20 rule, or Tyler Perry. And that means the person you're with only meets 80% of your needs. Nobody meets all of your needs. Nobody's Jesus. And the question is, what's the thing about them that I like the least? I just don't like it. God, if it never changes, they can't improve it, it won't leave, you can't redeem it. If it never leaves, can I live with it? And if that answer is yes,
But yeah, and that to me, to be like real talk, I didn't have sex with anybody. I waited. Was it hard? Yes. But I waited. He was the first man I was ever with, and I'm very proud of that. And the fact that he didn't say like the other guys, you're not having sex with me, so I'm not gonna be with you, that even proved to me that it was even better because it was something I personally believed in. So let me tell you, that is the most intimate and naked part of you when you are with that person sexually. So if you're gonna do it, that's up to you. But when you're married, that is, and you wait, it's the most beautiful thing because you know that I know that no man can come to Joe and be like, I've been with her. No. And he can be secure in that because I haven't given it to anybody. It's hard, yes it is. But is it possible? It is possible.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming, and thank you to our special guest. Give them a round of applause. Thank you so much for coming. Everyone, see you guys back here tomorrow. We're going to stand and have a word of prayer so we can close this thing out. Yeah, let's do it. Pastor, you want to pray for us?
dear God, you made us in your image. We're made for relationships. We're not made to be in isolation. And for some reason, we've distorted what that means. Does that mean we need a partner? Does that mean we need a puppy? Does that mean we need a baby? Does it mean we need a best friend? Father, help us to learn and experience that all of our needs can only completely be fulfilled in you. And help us to learn what it means to be a human being made in the image of God, who's known and loved by the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And if in your infinite wisdom you have for us someone else, we ask that that person would be doing the same. Keep us safe until we meet again here in the morning. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen.
Amen. Have a good night, everyone. Drive home safe.